All right, welcome back everybody. My name's Andrew and you're watching the Kelley's Country Life. And it is a cold and windy day here in Florida. So I'm gonna go ahead and forewarn you, this is going to be an all over the place episode. I don't even know what all is gonna be in this one because Mother Nature is throwing me for a loop here and I can't do exactly what I want. Plus this video is gonna go over 2 or 3 days of just random projects. But we're gonna knock some stuff out and take advantage of any good weather that we get. So if y'all watched the last episode, I was short quite a bit of lumber in the house of Tungru pine to finish that project. So today, I'm actually gonna get out here even though it is very windy, and this is the first time I've seen the sun all day. Cold, not supposed to get out of the 40s, well, cold for Florida standards, but cold as in the fact that I needed to sand this and polycoat some of this lumber. Well, my poly says it needs to be 60 degrees or warmer, and we're not even supposed to get anywhere near that for many days here, even though it's sunshiny Florida. So here's the problem that I'm having. This is just only a small section of lumber. I'm just going to work a full sawhorse at a time. I have more of this tongue groove inside and quite a bit more over in the house. This is the issue I'm running into. Look at all these black marks and streaks that is ruining my beautiful lumber. And as you can see, a lot of it matches up and it looks just like fork truck marks. So it's the forks off the trucks when they're handling this at the mill, and it is just marred up so much lumber. So wow, I mean, I'm just gonna have to spend quite a while sanding because I need a lot of this lumber. Some of this stuff it's just, look at this is too bad to even use. I just need to throw it out. And then what sucks is this is such a beautiful red piece. I know it would poly up and look awesome. I'm not even gonna try to sand this out right here. It's a waste of my time. But I have stacks upon stacks of lumber like this that we need to get straightened out, cleared over the next few days when Mother Nature allows, so we can keep knocking this house project out. Now, I've got trim and a whole bunch of other stuff to do, so we're gonna do some of that in this episode. Problem is, hey, I gotta paint a lot of that stuff too. Doing everything outside for various reasons I'll show. Just need some warm weather. So in order to do all this sanding, I had a little bit of a dilemma. I do not own an orbital sander. We're discovering some tools here lately that I should have, like a table saw and an orbital sander, that I just don't have. So I went ahead and got the DeWalt XR brushless orbital sander. It's the one that kind of does this motion. Really good for fine finishing. Somehow I've just never owned an orbital sander with all the woodwork I've done in my life too. I used to have a palm square sander that's just straight back and forth palm sander. Honestly, I can't remember if it tore up, junked up. It was an old school Black & Decker. I've tore the shop apart. I cannot find it. So it may have bit the dust on me years ago, and I'm just now looking and can't remember that it worked on this last project. So we're gonna try this out today too. I'm gonna start out with some 80 grit on some of this really bad looking stuff and then move to a 220 to kind of fine finish it. Then whenever I can poly it, we're gonna jump on to something else. Enough yakking, let's get to work. All right, so the 220 is too slow, I can already tell. So I'm gonna bump on up to some 80 grit. I'm also very curious as to how well a little dust collection bag works on a cordless tool like this. So as you can see, it's got holes all in the bottom. That's what this hook and loop stuff does. Let's see if it actually vacuums up and puts dust in here. I'd be curious to know if I could use this inside comfortably without making a mess. All right, so I hit it real quick with 80 grit. That's definitely the grit to start with. Takes the black marks and other scars out really quickly. And because it's an orbital sander, it left it with a relatively smooth finish. I threw the 220 back on, ran down this literally 10 seconds. It feels so smooth and so good. Just out of curiosity, only one board. Let's see if we've got anything out of here. Surprisingly, this little dust collector is working. Check this out. interesting. And it's spring loaded, so you can actually puff it out because that's somewhat of a breathable bag. That worked a whole lot better than I was thinking for a little cordless tool. Well, good. I know I'm not far into using this, but I can tell this is probably going to get a lot of use, especially for all the custom built furniture and little decorations and knickknacks that I have in mind to do inside the house. I'm going to have to do a lot of sanding to get a good finish on those. So let me shut up, throw it and fast forward. We'll knock out some of this, move on to something else. All right, so now you can see what I'm trying to accomplish. I have large gaps all the way around, just the way things meet walls, and some of these walls are uneven too. And this actually has a little give and bend to match some of the unevenness in the sheetrock. So some sort of trim is needed, and I have decided to make my own out of some pine. So right now I'm experimenting. Tiffany wanted something that looked more like a quarter round. I kind of like this squared off look. I'm going to show it to her, but I do have some round over bits where I can kind of make this into a quarter round. The problem with quarter round is it makes a hard, sharp turn, whereas I'm at a slight angle here with the roof, so I kind of have to make my own custom trim. It'd be no point in buying quarter round. Plus there's another problem with buying quarter round that we'll talk about in just a second. So I'm kind of experimenting with this. We just want something small. She did not want a big trim. I kind of agree with her. We don't want nothing coming down the wall any more than it needs to. But you need to figure out if we want to stick with something squared off or rounded, and then I can polycoat it, nail it up. All right, so now I'm going to take a round over router bit set and round over the edge to kind of give this a quarter round look. Although, yes, I know the degrees do not match up. So it'll be up in the roof like that where it's nice and squared off. This round over bit will take quite a bit of that material off and give it a rounded edge, and that's kind of what Tiffany's looking for. So I'm gonna just play with a little scrap piece and we'll see which one we like, and then we can just start busting our trim out. Now, one thing I told you, there's a reason why I'm making my own trim. One, well, I have to match that exact angle, but I could have bought sticks of pine quarter round and tried to cut that angle on it, and then it's technically done. But y'all are right. If you have not priced trim lately, oh my goodness, unpainted regular old pine trim should be the cheapest of all of it. For a stick of quarter round, it's like $14 right now, which that probably used to be a $3 or $4 piece of trim. The prime trim is actually cheaper than unprimed right now. So, and believe it or not, PVC trim, the one that you think should be the most, is by far the cheapest, a few dollars. But I need to have pine in order to poly this and it match the rest of the roof. And I know some of you are going to be thinking, why did I buy 1x4s? Well, turns out after sanding for days and hours, prepping all the remaining tongue and groove that I have left, I just really don't have enough that's in good shape. They have busted edges, knots in the way that I would have to cut out and that would really not be good for trim. Lots of different reasons, some deep stains that I can't get out with sanding. So it was more worth my while to go get some 1x4s from the store that are ready to go. And believe it or not, I will probably have $30+ in the 1x4s that I'll use for all the trim versus about $200 if I had bought all the quarter round that I needed to go around the room. I have a feeling it's probably only going to take me a little over an hour once we find out the design we want to make all the trim that I need, and then I'll have to cut and install it. But just to make it, take an hour, hour and a half, and I'll save myself probably $150 to $170. That's a pretty good hour's work. That's why I'm making my own trim. Plus it's fun. Well, as you can see, we got a nice, what I call like a quarter round. And I like it. But we can always go up to the next bit size and get a much more rounded appearance. We're gonna wait and see what Tiffany says. All right, so it is next day. Boy, was it chilly. But the good news is, even though there's still frost thawing out there, the sun's coming out and it's warming up quickly. So today may be the first day in literally weeks, that's weird to say for Florida, that it might reach the minimum temperature to polycoat and paint today outside. So fingers crossed, I need to make that happen. We're gonna watch the temperature. But what that also means is I have to knock out the rest of this trim. Tiffany and I made our decision last night on the style trim that we're gonna go with. It's very basic, but we played with a couple of designs. Let me show you. All right, so as y'all can see here, I have cut me some 3/4 by 3/4 trim stock is what I'm going to call it. I still have to put a round over on this. This is a squared off trim to meet sections of wall like in the gables that is truly squared off. Then you have sections like what I just showed y'all on camera yesterday, to where I have to put an actual 18-degree cut on it to meet the roof taken off. But we don't like the squared off look. That was an option to leave it as is. We want to put a round over here. And we played with a few different styles last night, ultimately deciding on what's called a 3/8 round over. So this is almost as tight as a quarter round, which means 1/4 section of, say, if you had a round broom pole out here, a quarter section of that, but not quite. It's not quite as big of a round over. It's a little bit sharper, steeper angles. We like the way it looks. And you can see that I also have that 18-degree cut on here as well. So this is truly custom made. I'm still going to call it quarter round to fit what we have going on in the home. It looks really good. I think once it's polyed, it's going to match the other pine just fine. So the plan is to fire the old router up after I put this 3/8 round over bit in. Half is what you're typically used to seeing. Let's run it through and get ready for the sun to come on out and allow us to paint and poly. Plus, we have some other stuff to do today. All right, so all the trim is sanded, shaped, and ready to go. Tell you what, that little orbital sander was awesome for jobs like this. Just running around the trim real quick with some 220 grit. It knocked the any roughness off from the table saw or router and has everything absolutely perfect. I also made another style trim right here. This is just called stripping, but it's in the trim sections. Just some 1/4 inch thick by 3/4 wide material. And believe it or not, I'm going to be painting this black and actually stripping out around the truss to hide the uneven edges right there. And I want to do it black so it looks like it's part of the truss. You'll never see it from on the floor. But for example, this thin wood strip right here is $5.46 currently at Lowe's for unprimed pine. Holy moly. So I've got quite a few pieces here. I just added it up. With all the trim that I have right here is about $250 is what it would cost me to go to Lowe's. I have about 2 hours in making all this. And I think I made it all out of about $32 worth of wood, if I remember correctly, because I still have some 1x4s left over. So think about that. 2 hours worth of work. I made over $100 an hour, if you want to look at it that way, by taking the time to make my own trim. I encourage y'all to take time to do things like this. You'd be surprised over your lifetime the hundreds of thousands of dollars that eventually will add up to working on your own vehicles, making things like this. There's another way of looking at this. Some of y'all may be looking and going, hey, we don't have a table saw or a router. I totally get that. There's one way, right or wrong, but there's one way I always look at going forward for new equipment or new tools. And I've done it a lot throughout this house. So let's say, for example, I'm going to build something that costs, I don't know, $500. It costs $500 to buy it, excuse me. All right, maybe it costs $200 worth of material and I need a $300 tool to shape and do everything. Well, there's $500 to buy it, there's $500 to build it and to buy the tool. Now, I'll look at it two ways. I'll look at my time invested. 2 hours right here was nothing. If it was going to take me a day or two to make all this, chances are my time is more valuable than the $200 and something I saved. I could be working on other things. I probably would have bought the trim if it would have taken me a couple days to make it. Again, time is money, but $100 and something an hour, oh, I'm going to build it. So if it costs me $500 to buy materials or $200 to buy rough materials and a tool to make what this $500 does, you just got a free tool out of the deal. Now, is it a one-time use tool? Maybe this isn't a good idea. But if it's a tool that you can use for the rest of your life or many more times to save you money, the way I look at it is the tool paid for itself on day one. Now, the next time you use it, it is paying you back dividends, an awesome return on investment. That's the way I look at things, and I do not have a problem purchasing tools. Somebody made a comment just the other day, for example, about me buying the lift. You know, I got a man lift in there. I could tell what they were saying in the comment, making the comment that you're out here complaining you don't have the money to deck your roof, but then you spent, you know, a couple $1,000s on a man lift because I split it with a friend. Well, you're not thinking. That has made me so much more productive. It has made me so much safer. Can you imagine me trying to put up all that tongue and groove on a ladder? No way. I'd already went to the hospital and spent thousands on bills, be hurt, and this job would be behind. But return on investment. I get to use that thing for months and months and months and months, and the deal that we got it for, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to turn around and sell it, and we get every dime back that I put into it. It makes much more sense to buy it than go out and rent one for $5,000 and get a dime back on my rental money. So you got to look at things like that, without a doubt. There's your free advice for the day. All right, so I'm set up, the sun's out. This is the boards that we spent time sanding, as well as a few more that I picked up to do a center cap and the peak that we'll get to. I'm just using a satin clear poly. Gonna shoot a quick coat over this. And I got to thinking, how can I make this work better for me? Because last time I did this, I set all these boards out on the ground, went to spraying, grass was blowing up everywhere, it was getting stuck to my wood, it was driving me crazy. I only have 2 sets of sawhorses. I'm not gonna build a ton for this. And then it went ding, 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 hey dummy, spray on the sawhorses, pick them up from the bottom, then go set them over there on these little racks that I have laid out for them to dry. So that's what I'm gonna do. Spray on the sawhorses, set up, go grab more, and just repeat the process. Being this high up, I shouldn't have any trash, debris, nothing getting on them. So I've had quite a few people ask, thought I'd share it on how I put my paint sprayer up. So I just get some paint thinner or mineral spirits, keep me one of these little nail jugs that I have laying around. And this is where I throw all my tips and stuff in as I break everything down. Just unscrew your tips, all your pieces that could have poly on them. Just drop everything in and I'll let it soak. I'll even take my strainer off the end here. Now the nice thing about these Graco sprayers is they have a water hose hookup right here. So I'll put the water hose in, I flush my entire system out the gun and out the recirculation hose right here with water. Then I'll fill this bucket up with the rest of my mineral spirits and pump that through the gun for a really good cleaning. And Graco says you actually should store your equipment, especially for long term, either with something that they sell for putting it up or mineral spirits in it. Then I'll just wipe down all my fittings, the gun itself with some mineral spirits, clean everything up, and then go inside in my sink and clean up these parts that are soaking right now. All right, so what we have going on here, this is the trim that I'm going to trim out the trusses with and the ends of the boards to hide any irregularities in the very ends of the tongue and groove. Now, outside corner molding, holy moly, sold out everywhere in wood, but I could find it in PVC. Typically PVC is outrageous, especially since the COVID excuses for resins and everything else. Believe it or not, this was actually quite reasonable, and it was the only thing I could find. I prefer wood, but we'll see if we can get this paint to stick to it good. Building my own outside corner molding, probably not as cost effective as buying this for what that I paid for it. And then here is that stripping that we're going to use. So once Tiffany and I made it to the big box stores and seen how much trim had went up, I'm talking, when you start talking window and door trim, $25 to $35 per stick of trim, it just blew our mind. We could spend $1,000 easy just trimming out the living room, from the windows to the ceiling to the base plates and one door. Insane. I am not about to spend thousands of dollars trimming the house out. So Tiffany, what she mainly desired, she had two requests. She wanted a wide trim around the windows. Well, these boards kind of fit that, and she wanted sharp edges. So we looked at 1x4s. Even though it doesn't have any kind of decorative designs in it, we weren't necessarily sold on that. Decorative designs doesn't really fit this style of house right here. So we talked about it. We figured, hey, we're going to save a pile of money. Let's just go with the premium, sanded, ready to go, 1x4 and 1x6 boards, trim the windows out like that. We can always go back down the road, pop those 1x4s off and change the trim out if need be. But this gives her that thick white border and the sharp edges that she was looking for without breaking the bank. And this wood's already expensive enough as it is, but you're talking $7 to $8 per board per stick versus $24, $25, $28 for decorative molding. Wow, just crazy. Personally, I have found that it's far easier to paint your wood outside on the bench, let it dry, go make your cuts, nail it up, and then do your final touch up inside. Because trying to paint white trim next to a green wall that it's attached to is a nightmare. You wind up making a mess, you get white paint all over the green wall. It's just aggravating. I'd much rather touch up a few nail holes inside instead of having to try to paint this trim completely inside. Well, I feel like this episode's probably rocking on a bit long, being that it's went over many days and I can't remember exactly what was all in it. So I think this is a good point to cut it short. As you can see, I've got painted trim behind me here, black Rust-Oleum trim over there, poly-coated tongue and groove, our custom-made corner round trim, and that's also poly-coated. It has been one busy day. I have never painted such a variety or coated in so many different ways in a single day. So what this means, next house episode, we're going to start installing all this. I mean, we're going to knock that ceiling out, then we're going to start trimming it out, trimming the trusses out, ultimately making it toward trimming the windows out too. We want to get everything done in there that we can while we have the lift. We're also going to hang the fan, do the last of the lights, then we're getting the lift out of the house and we can focus on other big projects. Thank y'all so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next episode.